stuff I had the adults do, they were using
My undergrad in it's cold, but it's fun.
those kids start talking to me, asking me questions, and then answering me. So, because I feel bad when I only use the small cohort, and actually the lessons they do. Yeah, and I didn't realize that. I know.
But you got a lot of those
And next year, I'm so concerned about how when these seventh graders go to eighth grade, and before the small number that are going to try to do band, small number that are going to try to go to MA for band, that will want to, I want to.
Let me shutter it and then we can.
breaking. Concert hall teachers are overworked and underpaid. Spread it around. Everyone's tired.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you all for being here and for digging in and doing the work today and having fun and really throwing yourselves into it. We have come to our closing panel, and I'm very happy to introduce folks. I'll keep the intro short because I know we're running a little bit late, and we want to hear as much as possible from our thoughtful panel members. I just want to again thank our funders for today, thank our many partners and all the voices that contributed to today's planning. Thanks to my amazing colleagues at Stanford Live as well. So I'd like to introduce our panel. Our keynote speaker, Mijan Celie Tho-Biaz, is returning. And Mijan, thank you again for getting the day off to just such an open and thoughtful start and really setting the tone for people to open themselves up and dig in today. So thank you. Just for any latecomers, Mijan Celie Tho-Biaz is a culture leader, oral historian, and multicultural educator. She is on the faculty in the Cultural Leadership Program at the Banff Center and has taught and researched and held leadership positions at Smith College, Columbia University, and the Institute of American Indian Arts, among others. My friend and colleague Armando Castellano is a musician, educator, and arts advocate. He performs as a French horn player throughout Northern California and leads the ensemble he founded, Quinteto Latino, which advocates for classical music by Latin American and Latino composers through performances and education. He has taught and lectured throughout the US in both English and Spanish, and graduated from UCLA in the Manhattan School of Music, and he is also the lead teaching artist for our programs in the Ravenswood City School District. Faith Kwon is a first grade teacher at Castellano Elementary and a district instructional coach and professional developer for Ravenswood City School District in East Palo Alto. She is the co-lead for her school's Turnaround Arts program, supporting teachers and administrators in leveraging the arts to create more equitable environments for our students. And she is a graduate of STEP, the Stanford Teacher Education Program in Stanford's Graduate School of Education. And our panel moderator, Professor Ira Litt, is the director of STEP. He's associate professor in the Graduate School of Education. He holds a doctorate from Stanford in curriculum studies and teacher education, and is a former elementary school teacher. His research and practice focuses on teacher education, educational equity, and exploring the educational experience of students often marginalized by the school context. So, please take it away.
Thank you, Ben, and thanks to all of you for a wonderful day and for sticking with us right here till the end. We have a great opportunity to come back and have a conversation with these fabulous artists and arts educators. Let me begin by recognizing the privilege that I have to be here with the three of you, and also to acknowledge that I'm one of the very few folks here today that doesn't really consider himself either an artist or an arts educator, but an educator who cares deeply about the arts. And is really excited about seeing the passion that all of you bring to this work and recognizing the importance of it. Let me take 1 minute to share some appreciations before we begin. First to Stanford Live, to Ben in particular, but all your colleagues for hosting this fabulous conference, and we hope you'll do it again. To all of our amazing presenters throughout the day for giving us opportunity to learn and to be in community together, so thank you. To all the terrific educators who were here and joined us and spent your weekend together to be in learning. I think it's important also to recognize and to thank the support staff, kitchen staff, custodians, all the folks who make a day like today possible, and let's take a minute to give them a round of applause. And finally, I think it's particularly apt at a conference that's focused on culturally sustaining pedagogy to take a moment to acknowledge that we're working on the historical lands of the Ramaytush and Muwekma Ohlone tribes, and I think that's important to acknowledge today. So I have a lot of hard-hitting journalistic questions for my panelists, as I shared with them earlier, and I know they're at the top of their game, so let's see what we can do here. Let me begin by centering the voice of a fabulous young scholar artist that I had the privilege to learn from this morning. It was one of the Ravenswood students in Armando's session, and he had this to share, and then I'm going to use this as a way to kind of kick us our conversation. So what this young student had to say was, my favorite part of building an ensemble was meeting over lunch and talking about our lives. What I think is particularly apt and rich about that is that this young person is noting that connecting lived human experience is really what it is that the arts offers to us and really centers our work in the arts. And so with that in mind, I thought I would ask the three of you to share with us some of your earliest engagements with the arts. So either or, you know, what drew you to the arts? But also maybe to reflect a little bit on your own experiences as a young person in and out of schools and the opportunities you had with the arts. I'll take you back.
I'll try to answer. I tell the story, I'll just recap really fast what I said this morning, how when I first started playing an instrument in the 4th grade and in those early years that I just couldn't do school. It was a really hard time reading and doing homework and listening to the teacher and doing all the things that a student has to do in 4th grade. I couldn't even spell my whole name in 4th grade still. And, but music I could do. And when I was telling that this morning, I was thinking, maybe I wasn't that good at music, but I could just do it, Like, maybe I wasn't all that great at it, now I think about it, but it was something I could actually do right away. I thank God. I think it really saved my spirit. And what was the other question? It was about...
Well, I wanted to know a little bit about your earliest experiences with the arts and also your experience in schools, and maybe these two connect for you.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is that my parents are huge art consumers. They always have been. They're like floor-to-ceiling visual art by Chicano artists. They've always been like that, and they just love going to performances. They still do, and so... I think that they really had an influence in terms of honoring artists. My dad used to put on visual art shows on his own. He used to draw the posters up himself and invite people and invite the artists to come, try to get them to sell their work just on his own. Mexican-American artists. And this guy, he used to work at Safeway, you know? So that's the kind of influence that community-based art making and promoting of artists. Wow, I didn't realize I do that too now. That's cool. Thanks for saying it. I learned it from him.
I think I have the privilege of having parents who really supported me in pursuing arts, and I actually can't remember like a time in my lived like consciousness where I wasn't engaging in the arts. But one thing I did experience was like a really big disconnect from my time in schooling, like public education and arts opportunities and experiences, and they felt really disparate and really disconnected. And but I have had this lifelong opportunity to experience joy and experience a lot of healing through arts. And like in high school, for example, I was fully truant, except I would come after lunch every day because I had literary magazine that I was an editor of, and I had dance. And so I would just skip all my classes in the morning and then just come in the afternoon. And, you know, I didn't realize at the time just how much I needed that and just how healing that was for me in a time when I needed it most.
I think I can echo what both of you shared. I grew up in a home, the arts were so rich. I used to call them sort of like orphan holidays. Cultural workers who were on tour or whatever would land in our home. And my mom was a fabulous cook, and so everybody wanted to eat, of course. And because they were coming from all of these different disciplines, and I was this little kid running around, they'd let me write plays. Like I remember one of the predominant, or I should say prominent black dance company, Joseph Holmes Dance, back in the day in Chicago. Joseph Holmes would be at our house, and I would like choreograph these dances. And you're talking about a man who used to dance with Alvin Ailey's dance company, like, but they would totally humor me. So that's part of how I came up through the arts, thinking it's just play, it's just play. So there's that one track, plus of course I have this huge love of stories. My dad and my mom both were some of the first black media producers in Chicago, late 70s, early 80s. And so I was always in an editing booth. My grandma was a librarian, literary arts. Like, we just had music, performing arts, and literary arts always available and fun. That said, I remember, when you just said that, I'm like, I think I missed 55 days my senior year. Like, I did not want to be in school at all, except for my visual arts class. And I loved that I got a chance to study abroad. And that was it. Like, the rest, I was like, count me out. I'm counting down the days until I can get the heck out of this place. So for me, it really was home, having the parents. Those were my early years with the arts.
Thanks all of you for sharing. It's interesting, there's some nice connections. You know, each of you had a rich...
lot of truancy. So.
Well, I wasn't thinking of the truancy, but I guess there's that too.
I had the same truancy, and I didn't say that part. And like, I didn't realize. I'm so happy you said that. I had the same problem.
Well, thank you all for being honest and vulnerable. I'll connect back to some of the earlier themes.
Did everyone write that down?
That's your tool.
Do not repeat to our teenage kids. Like, no.
I bet they know. Not yet. This is being taped. One of the things that I think probably many folks in the audience can relate to, I think a lot of folks who spend a life in the arts do have that privilege and opportunity that in their upbringing they have family or close friends who are deeply engaged in the arts, and that's an avenue and a pathway for them. But I think as educators, for most of us, most of the students we come in contact with don't have that opportunity and that privilege. So I'm wondering, in your experience, how do you think about, for those youth that you're working with who don't really have that kind of rich experience, how do you bring them into the arts so that they recognize the power and the opportunity that it can provide for them in the ways that it provided for all of you?
Okay. I hate to repeat some of the things I said this morning. I think that for me, when I think about being in the classroom, I usually have a certain number of minutes and a certain number of times I get to go, right? So first I'm super prepared and coming with a very open heart to wherever the kids are, and try to have my music classroom be a special, safe place for them, and I have my tools the way I can create that space for them. And I recognize my unique quality as an artist, especially, and as a man of color, as a bilingual person, as a person who lives in a lot of different worlds, and I try to bring that to my practice and share that with my students, and have it be a safe place for them to create and be creative. Those are really my main. I'm not trying to create conservatory musicians. I'm a French horn player, conservatory trained musician, but that's not my intent. I'm trying to foster creativity in children where the creativity is often it's seen as there's just not a places for them to be creative and have a place where they can give answers that aren't supposed to be the right answers, that we can talk about any answer and have that be a part of a conversation. Yeah.
I think your question is basically how do we bring the arts to young people who we're working with, more or less?
Sure, and how do we bring the young people to the arts?
Okay. For me, it's, I think I have like a really easy entree and ability to scaffold through oral history. That's my practice. And basically, it's so simple. I'm igniting nosiness. So, I mean, truthfully, but in a very skilled, focused way, starting with asking open-ended questions that are going to elicit stories, not facts, but stories. And so I pique their interest by saying, what are you curious about that your teacher might be scared to share? Or like, so in other words, go immediately to the vulnerable place that they don't have to share about themselves, but that maybe they're curious about with a family member or the teacher, or like, what do you think that your teacher has as an early memory that would be like a secret, like a really spicy secret, you know? So it gets their mind going very quickly, and that is our touch point for poetry, for longer form stories, and then for ultimately collecting a body of oral histories. Before we edit, before we share out, before anything, before we amplify. So yeah, mine is a scaffolded approach based on nosiness.
I think my perspective is different as a classroom teacher, and I know other teachers in the room experience just being constantly pulled and pressed for time. I think that just historically we see in a lot of classrooms that when there's a lot of urgency, like, oh, we have to teach our children how to read, they need to learn how to write, the arts are always the first thing to go. And that is definitely has been part of my lived experience as well. And I think that one important shift that I've made in my practice has been what Zaretta Hammond writes about in her book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, really about reframing the relationship between teacher and student as one of like allyship, and one of like as a unit together, making a plan and moving forward based on that relationship. And I think that that is something that I, as a classroom teacher, can really commit myself to. You know, maybe every day we don't have the opportunity for art making or art appreciation, and that's just the reality of the day-to-day. But what I can do and I can commit to is really shifting how I greet my students, how I engage with them, so that all of those other experiences for art making and, you know, just living in the art. They just come so much more naturally because there's so much mutual trust built in, so much actual authentic respect and not just compliance that's part of that community. And so the vulnerability that engaging in art and being in art spaces requires just comes up so much more naturally, and we're able to engage in that work so much better. That doesn't really answer your question, but.
Well, I think that's really helpful, actually, yeah.
Okay.
I
Were you
wanted to
gonna
add
add
one
something,
more
Armando?
thing, yeah, that came up from your talk, Faith, and seeing the pressures that the classroom teacher has, and what's unique about my role as teaching artist that my curriculum can emerge, right, and shift every week. So I write a new lesson every week. So I have a discussion with the kids, and I see what happened in that, and then the next lesson is kind of an open book about how it's going to evolve. And so that kids can also have an emerging curriculum experience too, and one that shifts and changes, but based on their actions and reactions. Yeah, it's a real blessing to have that experience.
I think that's great. One of the things I kind of heard listening across your responses is that there's a multitude of opportunities for us to engage our students with the arts. But that they should kind of be identified and characterized by a certain set of qualities that help to make that opening one that students can advance and accept. So being vulnerable, connecting it to things they already know, giving them opportunities, and helping it be diversified, I think can provide a wide range of platforms. The other thing that I heard from you is that it should be immersive. I think one of the challenges for us as educators who care a lot about the arts is that the arts are often limited and segregated, and so the degree to which we can make it pervasive and something that we're living at moment to moment in schools and out of schools helps provide for a wider range of platforms. So thanks for stimulating those thoughts. I wanted to bring us back to some of the major themes from the day that you so beautifully launched us with this morning. Mijan, I'm still really ruminating on those themes and threads that you launched this morning that I think were pulled throughout the day. But I'm just going to share a few words that kind of resonated with me from that talk and throughout the day. And all of you have had that chance to educate us, but I wanted to kind of put it back on you and ask you to think about these terms and how they influence your own work. So these are the words and the themes that I heard: vulnerability, trust, persistence, love, and messiness. I really like that, love and messiness together. So curious to hear from you which of those kind of really resonate in your experience and what you make of them after the end of this day.
Well, my favorite one is love. I was on a call, a committee call this weekend for something I don't remember. Donors of Color Network. And they want what's our goal, our year, beginning of the year pledge, and mine was solving problems with love, right? So I'm trying to when I have a problem, I'm just I'm thinking more about love instead of anger, and so this is one thing that it reminded me of. I talked about these words, vulnerability and trust, in mine. I think persistence is also another one that's resonating with me. One is, it reminds me of the practice room, because I had to practice in the practice room so many hours as a child and as a young adult. I still practice every day, and that persistence, I think, translates into my other practices in my life, and it just reminded me of that. And I was talking to Mijan between some of the sessions, and I was telling her how the change I want to make in chamber music and classical music and in arts education in the world, and as it relates to race and culture and identity, the kind is not something obviously I could do by myself, and I could spend my whole life doing just that and I don't think I'd see a heck of a lot of change. So I'm just going to keep having conversations over and over again until I fall over. And just whoever will have a conversation with me, I'm just going to do it and accept that maybe I'll just have, 1,000 conversations and I'll see a little bit of change, and just be okay with that. I'm just going to keep talking about it. So that kind of persistence, you know, and I want an outcome, but I'm also just want to educate people and see what their entry is into that issue.
Those words they resonate so much with me. It feels like every minute of my school day are all of those things. And I love that piece on messiness because that's just every day. But I am really thinking about how, about this idea of respect. And one of the biggest ahas for me as a teacher was learning and realizing that when we as teachers and adults in rooms of children were using the word respect, we were talking about compliance and not true respect. Yeah. And then I realized that all of these things, trusting my students, earning their trust, loving my students, you know, accepting their love back and making, you know, and continuing to build that relationship, persevering with relationship, when things are difficult, and like acknowledging messiness, sitting in it, talking about it, and making all of that transparent for students. And that is what felt like true respect for me on both ends, instead of that compliance piece and just like reframing this idea of classroom management into something more of how are we truly building a community in here, and how are we continuing to foster that community, because it's not something you do the first 6 weeks of school and then just hope it goes through June, because that certainly has not been my experience. If that has been yours, please email me. Because that is the hardest part of our job, I think, is just remembering to center that very human work and continuing to be vulnerable when things get so messy. So thank you, Mijan, for those words.
To piggyback off of what you both said, this last year of 2018, the through line was being vulnerable in every single space that I work in, and for the first time hearing the same identical question, regardless of where I was geographically or who I was working with. So cultural leaders, you know, addressing their pipeline issues in Canada, New Mexico statewide with those women of color, nonprofit workers and leaders, and then at the Institute of American Indian Arts, doing oral history trainings, and then working with different indigenous groups, building up and cultivating their oral history body of work. And every single time, and it was such a huge, huge challenge, I would get the question posed to me, what do you do, though, when your messiness is front and center? How do you respond? Which is so it's not theoretical. Like, they were like, what's your reaction? What's your response? What's your first step? Da, 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 da. And at first I thought it was just like gonna be this one isolated instance, and okay, I would get through that. But it kept coming up again and again and again. And the last sort of tender time that it came up was at IAI, Institute of American Indian Arts, when I was doing this visiting scholar time last semester. And I said, you know what? And I remember like I was actually getting like tears in my eyes. I'm like, it's really hard. It's really, really hard to fail publicly. It's really hard when you're supposed to be carrying a program, or you're supposed to be the expert because you're the one teaching. And when things go sideways, it's really hard. But what I'm learning is about recovery and repair. So for me, that's what the messiness means.
Thanks to all of you. Just to maybe add one more note, I think it's really important for us in this really hard and complicated work of caring for others and being in community with others, to be able to find the joy and the beauty in the mess, and also to be willing to be caring for ourselves as we're being vulnerable and as we make mistakes in public spaces, both so that we can continue to do good work, but also so we can model for others the importance of that process piece. I mean, that's so important to the work in the arts, is the process and the mess, and the learning from mistakes and the being human. So, and thanks to all of you for sharing that. I'm going to turn a moment to my sponsor here and make sure, do I have time for do I have time for another question? We haven't done, all right, so.
We'll do a
Yeah.
quick response.
What's that, with a quick response?
We'll do a quick response. Yeah.
You don't have, I'm gonna ask the question, you can take the time you need to answer it. Is that
All right.
okay, Ben? Great.
Go ahead.
So, let me frame it this way. So I'm gonna take the moderator's chair and the privilege there to build on this theme of love, and I wanna offer a personal connection to one of my most important teachers and mentors, Elliot Eisner, who is really an essential member of the kind of field of arts education. Elliot was my mentor as a doctoral student here at Stanford, and I had the great privilege to work with him. And so I want to put his voice on this stage as a way to honor his memory. One of the things that Elliot taught to me and many others is about the power of the arts, the value that it has in so many ways. So I'm going to share a quote that resonates with me about its power, and then I'm going to ask each of you a question to help empower us as we move forward in the day. So the quote that I've chosen from Elliot goes like this: the arts inform as well as stimulate. They challenge as well as satisfy. Their location is not limited to galleries, concert halls, and theaters. Their home can be found wherever humans choose to have attentive and vital intercourse with life itself. Thinking about that passage, you know, the times right now are a little bit complicated, sometimes dark, a little bit stormy. All of us are working in that context, particularly as we want to connect these themes of culturally sustaining pedagogy and the arts. I'm wondering if each of you would share with us some words of power, wisdom, to motivate us to be excited about doing good and positive work in a world that's potentially complicated and difficult. And I think it'd be a nice way for us to kind of leave the end of the day with some inspiration from from all of you. Light lift.
Are we out of time, Ben?
Don't look at me. I started the day.
Okay, now I feel I'll take on the mantle of the messiness.
Okay.
So I've put my wonderful new and old colleagues in a kind of complicated spot. Let me lower the affective filter a moment. You're all incredibly amazing educators. We've had the privilege of working with you throughout this day, and you've already inspired us in so many ways about how to be good and do good in the world. So just wondering, as you're leaving this stage and this day, what are some things that you're taking with you that are going to help inspire you in the next days, weeks, and months ahead that are going to be kind of fruitful and engaging and thoughtful? Yeah.
I can kick
I'm not
this
asking
one
you to
off.
solve all
No,
the world's
I can
problems
kick
right
this
now
off.
in one moment. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And I'm just going to share, if it's okay, something that Armando and I were talking about. Okay. All right. Not being in isolation across all of life. Hearing, you're sure I can say everything, or more or less?
Oh my God, what did he say?
I'm for the cause. For the cause, you can say anything. All right.
I'm like,
All right.
what I loved was feeling like I saw myself reflected back. I call it dancing the razor's edge. I cannot, for the life of me, imagine my professional life working in one place, doing one thing with one group of people for decades. Like I said, I would probably pull every hair off of my body before I would choose that. I don't know if it's undiagnosed ADHD. I don't know if it's because I'm creatively, like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm allergic to, can't do it. And so that said, though, there is also this high propensity for burnout. And what I'm learning is that the antidote for me is that I'm not alone, that I actually hear it reflected by other people who say, not only do I not go it alone professionally as a creative, as an educator, but also like just to hear Armando be like, hey, what about couples counseling? Like on the real. And I'm like, you're the third person in 2 weeks to recommend that. Like, oh my God, how did I miss that? I'm in Santa Fe.
We got deep quick, didn't we?
I mean, we sure did. We sure did. So for me, that's what I'm bringing forward. Tomorrow when I'm on the plane, I'll be writing about it. Like, don't go it alone. And it's cool to dance on the edge. Totally cool, but it's an edge. And another piece that we were talking about, I was sharing, because when you can do so many different things, people perceive that you can do so many different things so well. You get tapped on the shoulder to serve on boards, to give to this, to speak there, to everything everywhere. And for me, especially as a woman of color, it's so hard. I've been socialized to say yes, to take care of everybody else. And there's this metaphor: if my cup is bone dry, I can't even give you a taste, let alone replenish for myself. So I'm bringing that refortified idea back, because I heard it from him. I'm like, yes, a man even said it. Okay, all right. Not to give it validity because it came from a man, but I'm just like, all right, so that.
Thank you, Michelle.
And I would just jump right on that and say, ask for help. Yeah. And I think with, when we talk about the arts, especially in schools, especially in education, we think one more thing. And like, let's not let this be one more thing. Let's not leave this and be like, I have this more stuff to do. That's not, I have this much more to do. Ask for help, and, and keep asking for help. And I think that I just feel a little bit like crying right now because of what you said, and it's so true that we as educators are constantly doing all of this emotional labor, and we're constantly holding things for other people, and nobody is telling us to stop. And so we have to set those limits for ourselves. I cry in Ira's office like every other month. Like, he was my advisor in grad school, so he knows this is a surprise. But ask for help, say no to stuff. This is not one more thing. This is a radical thing to reshape what we're already doing, to give light to the already light-filled and beautiful stuff we're doing every day. Because, teaching and teaching in the way that I know we all are is radical, and it's beautiful, and it's enough, and, just keep asking for help. And I'm gonna start asking for help, and too. Yay. Me too. Yay. So, and that's what I would say.
That's nice. Mijan and I had a conversation between 15 or 20 minutes, and immediately we were talking about philanthropy and therapy and like really deep system. How are we going to solve these huge system problems we have that are inhibiting access to arts? And I love having finding spaces to have those big conversations. And because it can be very lonely what we do as individuals, and so that was something I took back. I appreciated the vulnerability that happened today in all of the sessions I saw. And when I was doing my session, we had 7 pieces that were created by the participants, and they were incredibly powerful. I was pretty blown away how awesome they were. So I just, it really makes me see a lot of hope in the room and with everybody that's here in using the tools that we're sharing today. I saw it immediately practiced. So I just have a lot, I always tell my wife there's no bad time for gratitude, so I'm really grateful for that, what I get out of that. And I cry a lot too. My teenagers are always trying to get me to cry just so they can laugh at me. My teenage boys, and because but I know they're learning from that too. I want them to see that vulnerability, especially as men, as they're going into men. So I'm down for that. Yeah.
Well, thanks to all of you. It's been a real privilege to be in conversation and to learn from you and from your amazing work and your beautiful words. And thanks for taking time to share with us. Thanks to all of you for being here with us today. And thanks again to Stanford Live for being our fabulous hosts.
And I really want to thank, Ben organized this whole thing, so let's give it up for Ben.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks to our panel for this beautiful, inspiring, heartwarming conversation. Thanks to all of our presenters and to our advisors for all of your amazing contributions today and in planning today. And to our ACE production team for making everything run smoothly. I want to thank my colleagues here. And thank you all for being here and for all you're doing and for coming here to learn. And thanks for what you're going to do, too. So, and have a wonderful evening, okay?